6:16, Finance Committee is open. First piece of business is gonna be the meeting minutes from February 12th. Let's get those out of the way. They are in your packet. Can I get a motion on the meeting minutes from February 12th, please?
I make a motion that we accept the minutes of February 12th as documented.
Wait a second.
Second.
Okay, any discussion on the meeting minutes as presented? Hearing none, all those in favor of accepting the meeting minutes from February 12th, 2024?
Aye.
I'm abstaining because I wasn't here.
Okay. And any opposed? Okay. All right, so I'm gonna save the FY25 budget for the end, because I think the other ones, some of them might be quick, some of them might need more discussion, but I think if nobody's opposed, I'm just gonna move the FY25 budget discussion to the end. And we'll pick off the other topics first. So moving to topic or new business C, town meeting articles, status update and balance on open town meeting articles. So this was provided on the email. I think it's in this, is it in this packet or no? It might not be in the packet.
Yes,
It's this page.
shows as a budget, yes.
Oh, the budget to expense report?
Yep.
Gotcha.
So
Okay.
those are all previously approved articles.
Gotcha, okay. So, Tommy, I believe this is one of the items that you wanted to bring up. I didn't know if you had anything specific that you wanted to talk about in this, or if anyone wanted to talk about anything in specific. I know there's quite a few, articles here that have quite a few dollars in them, obviously. So certainly worth the conversation and a great topic to talk about, especially the, public buildings one. So, Tommy, I don't know if there's anything that you wanted to start with, and we'll go from there.
No, just looking at this now, I wanna take a look at it, and we'll probably talk about this at another meeting, I hope.
Okay. Does anyone
I don't
else?
have any specific item at the moment, no.
Okay,
Not
does
the way I
anyone,
look at it.
did anyone look at this prior and have any questions or want to bring anything up on this? I know I see quite a few things from past years, especially in the public buildings, the library roof, well, no, that's fully expensed. The senior center feasibility, I know we talked about that, and it's, since we don't know what our plan is, that's probably not a bad idea that we haven't touched that yet.
Well, it looks like the library roof hasn't been touched.
No, that's, oh, I'm sorry, it's, yeah, you're right, I read that wrong. The library roof hasn't been I know, pretty sure they did quite a bit of work on the library roof, though. So is that a separate article that I'm thinking of? Does anyone know?
That was the heat, I thought.
They did the
They
heat.
did the heat.
So there is an article,
Yeah, go for it.
there is an article and there is some funds set aside for library and public safety roof repairs. We actually just put that out to bid. We put it out to bid last year, due to, I think, poor timing, no one responded to the bids, we're putting it out again. We'll be opening bids next month. I think it's supplementing use of ARPA funds and article money to complete its roof repairs to both the public safety building and the library, which were, I think, built around the same time by the same contractor and architect.
So just to make sure that I understand, this list is a list of all the articles that were approved and the spending to date in those articles, leaving the balance.
Yep.
Okay.
So that being said, there is $255,000 worth of remaining money to be spent as a combination of all these articles, which it seems like a big number, but I think when you break down into it, you know, as Austin just mentioned, you know, 41,000 of that is for the aforementioned roof, which is gonna go quickly, right? So that's, you know, a quarter of it basically right there, or the senior center feasibility has been talked about a lot, and obviously, you know, we wanna use that, it's just a matter of getting a game plan there. So that's, you know, between those two, we're almost up to 100,000 anyway, and 75, so. There's still a lot of money though, and a lot of these small ones, I think it would be nice to see some of the smaller ones closed out and to get that back into free cash, especially going into the later discussion of free cash usage, right? So, some cleanup here, I think, is what I'm guessing Tommy's initial thought process was with this, is to clean some of this up, which,
So, community center parking, that has come up at least a half a dozen times. And we have $15,000 in unspent money, and that parking lot needs to be extended and better, without a doubt.
And that's from 9 years ago.
Yeah.
But in your opinion, do you think it's worth putting
Right.
15 cents into that?
At this point, that's the question.
Except for when you have to have something down there and you're parking on the back and there's big holes and if there's a soccer game and they're having something over at the senior center, there's no parking. I mean, so the thing is in some respects, you kind of have to have more parking than what we currently have for how that building is being used.
Well,
Yeah.
there are things you need to do, even though you don't like to do them, because the facility has to function,
Right.
even though you're trying to do something else over here, so you're right.
I mean, we've been over there having meetings and parking in the back. I mean, you fall into a hole, I mean, easy.
No.
problem with that is 15 grand doesn't do squat for paving at this point.
It's not gonna be paving, it was only going to be millings.
Oh,
It
okay.
was only gonna be millings, and
Just
it was.
put millings down
yeah.
on the grass
Yes,
there?
That, I remember that being said, now I don't know if that's still the plan, but I know back then.
And that was gonna be done in-house, so.
Yeah.
So that number would probably work for what wants to be done.
So there is millings there. I don't know when they were installed. And I don't know what funding source. I don't know if they were just millings that were from previous road project that they had and didn't need to acquire any additional. There are some millings, there's certainly a lot of work that's needed, so, I mean, I don't know when you had your first town administrator, but this is getting close to even before, this is like a pre-town administrator kind of project.
Yep, it's going back there.
Yeah, so I don't know, the rationale for why those funds weren't spent, but certainly if, to everyone's point, if it's something that is still a priority and we think it's reasonable to use that kind of money, we, could and should advance that. But
So who's responsible for tracking these projects to make sure that if it is something that needs to get done, it gets done? Is that town administrator's office, or is that the DPW, or?
It probably depends on the year, and I joke when I answer that because, some of these articles were spearheaded by a department, so I would point to the department head that was responsible for it, and you can see some projects were completed and closed out. Ultimately, I mean, it's town meeting approves it, right?
Right.
Appropriated at town meeting, whether it's the select board, town administrator, finance committee as your oversight body. I mean, we're all responsible for it in some respects. On the administration side, making sure that we're continuing to stay on top of these and like Alex said, kind of closing them out when complete. I would point that to me and the finance department to make sure that, when things are ready to be closed out, we recommend and put them on the warrant to be closed out.
So closing it out is one thing, getting it started is the first thing. So if we've got this 30,000 set aside for it.
There's a lot of projects here though,
Yeah.
so, I mean, I would probably take my direction from the select board and
Right.
finance committee as advising us to say, hey, we really don't think that, for example, the 7897 for the annex, I don't even know what that's for.
But,
You do?
It was for a plotter printer for the planning department that was never spent.
Interesting.
I think you're
So
right
they
what
could
you
print
just said. I mean, everybody's has a stake in it, but whatever department asks for that article at the time should be the one that keeps their eye on it to keep pushing it, cause if they asked for it for a reason, it's something they wanted to have done, they should be following up on it.
And they should, but the question is, who's gonna ask the question of that?
Well, I know the finance committee, I know several of us have been asking since, two town administrators ago, we were told it was none of our business.
Yeah, well, I mean, to be honest, in one of the proposed policies, which I know we'll briefly go over, it's a standard practice in many other communities, if there's no action within 3 years, for example, the article is closed out.
Yeah. So
Um,
that will drive interest.
Yeah, oh yeah. So I don't think I'm proposing a timeline in the policies, but I think just getting the practice started of we need to start to get things done. Because ultimately it's the voters that approved this and they want to see progress on it. If not,
Well, and that's why just closing it out at a select board meeting is probably not the best way, because
they go to town meeting.
they have to go back to town meeting. Okay.
Yeah,
Because
just like
I'm,
reappropriating too.
because I'm looking here, the signage for Wachusett Street and East County Road, I remember that one very well, because there was all those horrible accidents and how important it was, and I know we got the
Blank stream.
blinking signs and all that, so I don't know how we got that.
Maybe we got a grant or something.
Well, that's the thing, but that's what I'm saying, I was just like,
Well, that's the thing, if we get a grant to cover something that's already been voted, shouldn't that be like an automatic on the next warrant to go before the voters to close it out?
You would think. I don't know.
I mean, things fall through
Yeah.
the cracks, I get that, but.
I think there's also, and I hate to say this, sometimes I think it's very possible that projects were completed or expenditures were incurred, but they just weren't charged to the article. So maybe they were charged to a departmental purchase service or supplies budget and not specifically to the article. Now, not only have we had change in town administrator, we've had change in accounting, and some other department heads, so the continuity there isn't always there to have a context of what happened 10 years ago for the community center parking lot, so.
But it points to the fact that we need a procedure, as we were saying, there's a procedure required to say if we get it and it gets identified as something that needs to be done.
Yep.
We need a timeline to be able to say it'll be done by, or it really wasn't required.
Well, the timeline should go in hand in hand with whatever the article was for, because
Right.
what I wanted to add to that was sometimes, as you said, if there's no action in X amount of time, then that's one thing. But sometimes an article is put on there and it could last 5, 6, 7, depends on what it was for. And sometimes when you're doing a project, it takes 3, 4, 5 years. Cause I mean, I, like the public safety building addition, I mean, we had articles that were being expended over a longer, but they were being done. But I'm just saying, it has to, you gotta look at a number of factors before you just say, okay, it's gotta go away, so.
I know the accountant in my previous community, she was a stickler. She would go into Munis, our system, and she's like, I didn't see anything within 3 years, like on the date, send it to the finance director to propose to close it out. She was very strict about it.
Well, honestly,
But
that should be
obviously
happening,
too, you know.
and if the finance director or whatever department it's associated with can't say like, oh no, I still need that for this, then it should be, I mean, there should be a pretty strict timeline, cause otherwise we just have money, I mean, again, $255,000 of sitting here money that's not technically doing anything.
It's an opportunity
Yeah,
lost.
hopefully we'll do something, I'm not saying it's not, purposeful, but it's quite literally doing nothing right now.
I mean, the pool house, I mean, we all remember those conversations
Yeah.
about the pool house,
That
how
was like-
imperative it was.
exactly, we gotta stop right now, it's gonna stop, and, yeah, and
It's
it's
still
not
sitting
spent.
there.
Well, they did do the drainage.
Yeah, but the pool house
Stores.
sewer line was
Sewer
the big
line?
discussion, cause
Remember that
remember the
one?
toilets didn't work, and we can't have people down there, and they
Yeah.
use it on July 4th,
Yeah.
remember that whole conversation?
sewer line? Where's the sewer line?
Huh?
I wonder if that's a case where they took it from the wrong line item. 'cause
So they did
the
replace the
doors and
toilets.
They did replace.
They didn't do the doors
They
yet.
didn't do the
No.
doors.
Right.
So maybe instead of sewer line, I think, cause they did get new toilets for the pool house, but, so, yeah, it may be one of those, but. I mean, to everyone's point, I mean, there's a lot of money here, there's a lot of projects. I think, some of the proposals, like, for example, at the town meeting in the fall, we did repurpose, an article, for another project. So, there's an opportunity there to also take advantage of previously approved articles and repurpose them for similar or like purposes, but, similar things like, the bulletproof vest, there's $52,
Right, clearly spent.
things that can easily be closed out for bylaws and things like that.
I would suggest that we add something of this nature to our process, to an annual process for the finance committee to review this, a few months before town meeting each year. And then make recommendations on, at least having town administrator to review / close out ones that we look at. Yeah, or at least talk about it and just have it as an annual review. Doesn't need to be a
Annual
motion.
town meeting, or special town meeting.
I don't think it matters. Annual town meeting in case special town meeting doesn't happen.
So there's a process proposed in the special purpose appropriations policy that's under consideration of the select board at this time, and it does kind of talk about the requirements of town staff and finance to report to relevant agencies of essentially what we're doing tonight.
Gotcha.
So I have a specific question on the events committee, the celebrations. I mean, the 300th is over now. Is that sitting for the events committee to use, or can we turn that back in and ask for that to be turned back into the town?
So the select board sometime last year, essentially the article's open, but the select board provided authorization to the events committee to continue expending out of that article for,
I thought it was just turning over the
Projects.
gift account.
no, they closed out the gift account.
Yeah,
The
and
gift
gave it to,
account
right?
was
What
given
the-
to the events committee,
yep.
repurposed to the gift.
Correct.
to
The
the-
gift account was repurposed to the events committee.
Yeah.
The article is actually being used by the 4th of July committee.
gotcha.
Which it was authorized in the motion that it could be for either the 300th committee or the 4th of July committee. So the 4th of July committee has been using that to help pay for things such as like police details and things like that. The events committee has not used it.
That 4th of July
That was the
committee
money
was
that was-
separate.
That money was the one with, the article that was appropriated at town meeting.
Correct, and
Was
if
it-
you
And
read
the
the
article
language of it,
specifically said either one. I mean,
it didn't,
oh,
but there
oh.
was an amendment made on the floor that the language allowed it to be used
Oh,
by either
so that is part of
or.
the article then, yeah.
Correct, so it's the
That was
4th
what
of
was
July
voted.
committee
Okay.
that's using it right
So
now.
can we change that to say 4th of July committee?
No, because this one here is gonna stay with the events committee, it said.
No,
No,
this,
no,
this
this
one
one's
is the
4th of
one
July.
that it does say, it's 4th of July is using that money.
It's $14,000 that the
Oh,
town
oh,
could
oh.
use for
I thought this
more
was the
than-
other one, okay, I'm sorry.
Personally, I'm opposed to getting rid of that one. We're gonna pay for it either way. If it's already there, just use it. If they're gonna come, we're gonna pay for that.
But just put 4th of July. Because then when it says, when they get up and say that they get no town funding,
You mean the
It-
4th of July committee?
yeah, if the 4th of July, because they always put that out when they put it out, that they receive no town funding. Well, no, they have received some town, it's not a lot, I'm not saying that, but it is some. It's more than they've gotten for many years.
But do we wanna grind them up? I mean, they're the ones that do it.
But it shouldn't say events committee, it should say 4th of July, because it's not events committee
I
celebrations.
just don't know that we wanna grind the 4th of July committee for all
No,
their
we
hard work.
definitely don't want it.
But the events committee and the 4th of July are two separate things. So having it say events committee makes it sound like it's Friday nights on the concert, those kinds of things versus the 4th of July celebration.
Right.
I'm just saying.
Is it easy to change the title? Yeah, I mean, it seems like a reasonable change, cause it is technically for the 4th of July, it's not for
Yeah,
the
but it could
events.
say 300th anniversary.
We don't know what it
and-
says after that.
No, that's what it says, but it could say that and the
Right.
4th of July committee. I mean, and that would be exactly what it was, because when somebody goes back 10 years from now to look this up and they're looking for whatever information, there's gotta be a trail backwards,
Can
right?
you check to see that it has 4th of July somewhere in there?
Well, can it,
Because the 300th, the events committee didn't exist until after the 300th is finished.
Correct.
but
So whoever put events committee, get rid of it and say 300/4th of July. I don't care. It's just so that it's, when anyone looks at it, they know what it was for.
Correct. And then just let them do it.
Yeah, that's fine.
so does this events committee have the power to fix the bandstand up there? With
Is it
this money?
broken?
Say there was a problem with the bandstand.
Well, the events committee would, not with this one, they would use the gift fund, if it's there. There's two separate accounts we're talking about. Am I
Yeah, but-
correct? Correct.
Yeah, but there's,
One of those accounts is listed in your special revenue report.
Oh, yeah.
alright,
Alright, so we can move into gift accounts, which is the next topic from this. If we need to go back to town meeting articles, we can, but this is part of the next conversation anyway, so.
Did we, resolve anything?
Right, I was gonna ask the same question.
We are gonna make sure that it says 4th of July somewhere on that article. Yeah, 4th of July committee, somewhere on that article.
But the agenda item was for nothing more than a discussion.
Yes,
Okay.
correct.
Are we done with the Woodhouse chimney?
Yeah, I know.
Are we done? Do we know?
Where are you looking at that, Ken?
It's the first one on the public buildings for
That's the
budget.
$24,000 that we spent to remove
To
some.
the Historical Society.
Okay.
We spent 10 grand of it so far, we have 14, almost 15 left.
I think that was a project that, an initial request was made, I believe probably by the Historical Society.
Yeah.
And
We were all here for that one.
yeah, you guys were probably all here and have the context, so you probably know a lot more about it than I. Realized that the scope wasn't necessarily, I think, probably what was totally needed. So I don't believe that, I don't know what the scope of the project was initially, if it was to remove a chimney, repair a chimney, but it looks like there's still a chimney there.
My understanding that when they got up there, it wasn't as bad as they
Yeah.
thought it was going to be, so
Right,
they
that's
did
what
not
I-
Oh, it
have
was
take
going to
the whole
topple
chimney.
down and completely destroy the building to, oh, it's not that bad. Huh, imagine
wrong.
that.
Yeah,
I
that
think
was a long discussion too.
Wasn't it both chimneys that needed to go?
Yeah, they were
there
gonna
was two
collapse.
And didn't
No
it-
one was going to do the roof until those were fixed.
And didn't it go
It
to the
kinda,
brickwork
it kinda
too?
got the slow roll after our building inspector fell through.
But there is still one chimney there, right? There were two that came down, but I think the problem was Joe Buckley put that on there and we had the discussion with him, and his statement was that he wasn't sure what had to be done when the chimneys got below the roof line, there would have to be boarded in, covered so that there's no
Kept off. Yeah.
anythings, and he had no idea what it was gonna cost, so that's why the number was there. So we found out what the number is.
Well, I mean, frankly, the first 6 items there under buildings and public buildings, 6, 7, were all Joe at the end of, last year, putting items on there. And almost none of them have been touched.
Right.
Alex, if I remember correctly, I think the wording of the article for the chimneys also included for the
Masonry.
foundation,
Masonry
yeah, the
work, the
foundation and the
steps.
porch
It
and
was
stuff,
any
yeah.
masonry, but like honestly,
We're over a year old, I just was curious, I mean, this was it's not safe, we shouldn't have people here, we can't use it.
Yada, yada, yada.
And now it's,
It was bad.
So
well,
it's-
that's what we heard.
It
Guy
seems,
fell through the roof, it was obviously bad.
He didn't,
Well, they
he
can't
fell
be
through the
good.
attic, well, don't
Yeah,
even
but
get me
that's not
going.
near the foundation, that's okay.
it seems to me like these are all a bunch of individual research projects, and
You guys
we
won.
gotta figure out who's gonna do the research. Are we,
we are not. We don't have the ability to do
we
this.
are not, are we
That's why
to
I wanted
charge
the
somebody
list.
with doing it?
Well,
Is that what I heard you say earlier? Is it select board, us? Who do we say, let's find
Yeah,
this stuff
I'll
out?
look into it. I'm not gonna get a comprehensive update for your next meeting, cause obviously there's a lot here, but.
Yeah, there's a fair amount of work.
No,
to
I
be
think
done.
the total of this is gonna take quite a bit to clean up. I think if we get a good cleanup going and then we make this part of an annual process, it'll be much more
Right.
doable on an
I
annual
agree.
process
It's
going
been
forward.
5, 8 years in the making, you can have 60 days.
Well, the board just did it with ARPA. Some of the projects that were closed out, we worked with departments to see what was necessary, or, was there anything else that was
I think
needed, so
going
we
into,
closed some projects out there too.
looking forward to the budget discussion, it would be very nice to close out 100,000 of these projects and be able to use that towards, next year's budget. Be a good place to find money to be able to be used.
And I asked the question only to see the list, and then we could start talking about them. They can't all be done right away, you're right.
No,
Different things gotta
next
take
week.
the process, so.
Next week?
So is there requesters assigned here? Are there people who would have made these requests that could be listed here so that we would know?
So the department code usually will give you some sort of an idea.
Okay,
And then those are kind of lumped together, so public buildings, police department, for example.
okay.
But, I'll just insert a little caveat, maybe those aren't always going to be the responsible party. So who's responsible for education and who put the article forward? Right,
Right.
so.
Okay.
Fair. I like that there's an article for $465, like that's gonna buy anything ever.
Was that for, that was for the light in front of Naquag, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Crossing or something?
It's the school zone. The blinking light
The
saying.
20
school zone.
mile an hour light. Oh, no, the one further down. It's the,
It's the
Okay.
one that says school zone 20 miles per hour,
got
yeah.
it.
So we've kind of half moved on to gift accounts. Again, Tommy, I don't know if there's anything in specific. I know you probably just wanted to see what was available in all the gift funds.
On this list, yeah, I wanted to look at, and it'll have to come in the next several meetings, we'll talk about them.
Okay, does anyone have anything specific that they wanted to bring up now that we're looking at gift fund accounts and seeing how much is in them?
What does that refer to, insurance reimbursement over 150K and under 150K?
So by law, we are required to, if there's an insurance claim, for example, let's say for property damage, we're required to put insurance proceeds into a separate fund. And there's, Mass General Law has some particular timings on payment and what you can utilize it for. So that's kind of a tracking thing for our insurance claims.
Thank you.
Good question. Not a lot of money in there.
No, I just didn't know it was for.
Does that fall to the general eventually?
No, usually it's kind of like we are allowed to incur costs. No, it's almost sort of like a grant account in a way. So if we, we're not gonna wait without a cruiser, so we'll buy a cruiser and the money goes into there and then we just kind of transfer it over to the general fund.
Okay. Gotcha.
There's still money in the fire department for the 250th anniversary.
I'm sorry, what?
There's still money here for the 250th fire station. I assume that's the 250th
Correct.
anniversary?
But that's a trust fund,
For Tommy.
that's a trust
John,
fund
for
No,
John.
I get it. I just,
that stays there, and what that is that when the original portion of the fire station was completed, that's the fire station side, that was the money that was left over, and it was voted to put that into a trust fund that the interest from that fund could be used for building maintenance, but you cannot spend the principal. So that's gonna stay there forever.
Whether you like it or not.
Well, I
No,
know,
I
maybe the
just
town
was
can change it, but right now, it stays there forever, and only the interest off that account can be spent.
how many libraries does this town have?
Used to have one, another one.
As I'm seeing Brooks Library, King Library, the Roche Library,
Yeah, what
Murphy
does that
Library,
refer
Putnam
to?
So
Library.
I think those are the names of the
Donors,
donors.
correct.
Donors for the library.
Brooks
No,
Okay.
no, donors for those funds.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Donors for those funds.
It's in their
Now,
name.
again, if
So
you
the
gave-
For the
Narwhal,
library.
if you
For the
contribute $1
library.
million, which I know you preparing to the library, it would say Narwhal Library.
Right. And those, again, the principal can't be spent, but the
It's
interest
cool.
gets spent.
The Narwhal Memorial Library.
That's a real thing?
I can tell you right now, that's not gonna happen.
Make it 2 million.
Even if I win, it's not going here.
Wow.
I got some college educations I can help pay for.
There you go.
Come on.
If you win.
If I win $1 million, I got a couple of kids I can help go to school.
I know he doesn't do anything nowadays
No, it
anyway.
doesn't.
Okay, any other questions on gift account balances? Okay. Public meetings, holding public information sessions related to the budget. That was also you, Tommy, right?
Well, I just wanted to bring up about, like we did last year, that's what that's all about. Are we gonna do them, and how many are we gonna do, and how often are we gonna do them?
I think it's certainly a good thing to do. I think that this one, and I think last year was obviously, I don't wanna say we were trying to sell something, cause it's not the right way to put it, right? But at the end of the day, we went there with an agenda and then we did it as an FAQ after, right? And we opened it up to the floor. I think now it goes into more of a opening it up to the floor just to get general comment and see where we are. you know, I don't think we go there with trying to sell something, right?
It was information sharing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
That work out for us.
That's why I'm saying it wasn't the right way to.
Worked out right, but,
I'm not saying it in the right way, but.
no, I understand what you're saying. It is, but
Now let's
that's,
stand over here and look back and see how that worked out for us.
Well, it worked out fine.
no, and I guess I think we should be continuing to do that.
Yeah.
That should continue. Now, Austin is doing some things with his town administrators meetings. And we should parley on that,
Sure. It
us and
could,
the selectmen,
it could be done in a number of different ways, as long as we keep doing it.
right?
Yeah, I certainly think that we should formalize that in some way, shape, or form. I don't know, you know, when obviously, we need to get a budget finalized, right? Because we can't really go and talk about something that isn't final. So we do have to wait until that's finalized. And then once we do that, you know, we want to make sure it's a good amount of time before town meeting. But I would say that once we have a final budget, we could schedule some. I don't want to go crazy because obviously that's a lot of time for the committee to volunteer as well.
Right.
But I think that there can be a middle ground there for sure. Sounds good. Is there anything else on that, Tommy?
Well, I just think that, again, I've said it at several previous meetings over the last 2 years, is you'll see in the paper, there are a number of towns that post and it's a legal announcement of a public review or presentation of the budget before the town meeting. So they post it in the paper and then they have whatever the meeting entails, similar to what we did, I'm sure. And people can come and ask questions and do it, so. But we don't have to do it that way, but I'm just saying, there's a number of towns that do that.
Yeah, I mean, we could, especially once we get the budget done, we could certainly do that as one of our committee meetings. We could post it and have it in a slightly bigger room and accept public, you know, have them just make it open to the public and make that the entire night as well. But I think the Sunday things from last year did well because people were available Sundays and not that people can't be available at night, you know, at 6:15. We all are, so why can't they be?
Yeah, but older people who wanna come, they, you know,
Yeah.
they can't drive at night,
Yeah.
what have you.
Yeah, no, I think that'd be great. So yeah, that's all.
Now, the other thing that we may wanna consider there is, you know, we had department heads last year, we didn't have any, I don't remember if we had, school department, education, at any of those meetings.
He was here, the one that I attended.
Was he?
Yeah.
Okay, so I think it's good to be able to have that person.
Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't be a bad idea to invite anyone who wanted to show. I mean, we could put a message out whenever we do them to all the department heads, including education, and just to say if you're free, if you wouldn't mind supporting. And I think that, you know, yeah, that's
Just to
fine.
sit in the audience.
But it doesn't even have to be the superintendent, it can be our school committee members.
No, you're right.
Because they're the
I
ones.
think
that
they,
vote
I
on
think
the
they were
budget.
both there, the
Right,
one I was at last
yep,
year.
But that's the thing, so.
Okay.
Cool.
So, I mean, if we think about it, we only have 6 or 8 Sundays between now and then anyway, right?
Right.
And if we're not even gonna have the numbers for what, 2-3 weeks, something like
Likely,
that?
we should be finalized by when the school presents, which is in
14.
Yeah, 14.
2 weeks. So you have 6 Sundays theoretically, give or take. It's not a ton, I guess.
One of them's gonna be a holiday for a lot of people, so we'd probably shy away from that one.
Yeah, I mean, I think to me 4 seems like the highest I'd want to go for like Sunday meetings or Sunday presentations because I think that would be sufficient and that.
I would think we'd get away with 2 without
Two,
it
I
all.
would-
I was gonna say I think
High.
4 is high. I was just about to say that.
2 is probably sufficient, cause
Yeah.
there's no, and then see what you get with the first one, because
Right. I'd say
There's
4
nothing
is the max.
controversial
I'd
yet,
say 2 is.
unless the
I'd say
school's
2 is
doing
the minimum. I don't think you'd want to do less than 2 because you'd want one and then a backup if people can't attend the first one.
Or
So you'd want
snow.
2.
I put on here, when I sent you this note, I put 4 on it because we did 4 last year.
Right.
No,
I agree
think
with what you're saying.
4 seems like a good maximum to me, and I think
Right.
2 seems like a good minimum to me.
Yep,
So
that
I
sounds
think
good.
anywhere in between there that we can make do, and obviously we'd have to have some of us available to do it, so we'd have to deal with that. So it's a combination. I think anywhere between 2 and 4, I think is very reasonable for that amount.
Town meetings, what date? The 4th,
The 11th.
the 11th.
I won't be there. Actually, I probably won't be there.
Excuse me?
What did you say?
I
May
probably
11th.
won't be there.
Man, I thought you said June. I had you.
If I'm there, I think my wife might kill me. So
Well, hey,
only have a baby due right around then. Probably won't happen.
we'll let you get slide.
What, the meeting or the baby?
Yeah, let me just tell my wife, see how that one goes. All right.
What time is that at?
The baby, it comes when it
haven't-
comes.
They haven't set a time yet.
Okay,
Babies were
probably 5
unpredictable.
o'clock or something, right?
6.
Who knows, I might be there. Who knows?
What's the due date?
8th.
That's her second.
All right, and the last thing on the agenda before we go back is the financial policy, which I think, would you want to talk about that? Is that,
That was Tommy's as well.
I know that was Tommy's, yeah. But you've already brought it up once, so.
That's the new one that's, like you said, is a draft right now, right?
But it's the same one you guys reviewed last year.
Right, we reviewed that, but that's the old one.
No, you reviewed the new one last year.
I don't think they reviewed this package.
No, we didn't review a new one, we reviewed an old one.
We haven't seen this one
It
before
didn't
today.
sound familiar to me when I was looking at it.
No.
No, because the other one we had was much different.
Okay.
Yeah, the
Much
current
different.
policies? Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oops.
Yeah, we reviewed the old one, we decided to make no changes to it. Obviously, the new one is still in draft form. I'm assuming that once you have a full draft that you wanna move forward with.
Well, no, I mean, so, this was presented to the select board for their initial consideration, and we've begun discussions. More so, so as select board, as chief policy
Yep.
making body, wanted to give the courtesy of the finance committee to be able to review these, provide any comments, as the select board is under review at this time. What I can say with these policies are, it's incorporating a lot of the policies that the finance committee suggested no changes to, just beefing them up a little bit and adding new policies. And I'm not gonna go through my spiel that I gave the select board the other day, but one of the things that we wanted to incorporate in these financial management policies are some of the best practices in especially municipal finance. So we've kind of broken them down into 2 separate sort of categories. One is financial planning and the other is financial operations. So planning, you think about like a multi-year financial model, which we've now presented. We talked about we talked about the special purpose appropriations, so warrant articles. Capital planning, spelling out the process a little bit more than what the bylaw dictates about capital planning. Auditing, things like that. So there's a lot of information in there, and the policy gets very detailed about where we should be on the planning side and also on the operations side. Creating through policy an administrative financial team, which incorporates the finance department, myself, talking about how do we do procurement and spending on projects, managing grants. It also incorporates some things that were recently accepted at a special town meeting, such as the tailings, accepting provisions of Mass General Law, which is tailings, which is essentially uncashed checks from vendors or individuals. There's a mechanism for us to be able to do that through Mass General Law, and this policy spells out that process. Also enforcement of taxes, things like that. So it tried to be a little bit comprehensive, took a look at what some other communities have. We took a look at Mass GFOA, the Government Finance Officers Association best practices, and also some language from Division of Local Services from DOR. Put that all into this financial policies manual for the community, town departments, and obviously relevant boards and commissions to follow along with. So.
So the last time when we did these, it was signed off by the select board and signed off by the finance committee. Now that it's a policy, we don't sign off on it.
Well, those previously were policies too. I don't know of any other finance committee in any other Commonwealth subdivision that finance committees have policy authority. I think that's why I'm presenting as,
We just signed off that we agreed
Yeah.
and we were going to abide by it. And we had some discussions on it, so.
Yeah, so that's why we're here
It
tonight.
wasn't like we wrote it, but we signed off on it so that at least in 10 years or 15 years, when people go, well, who would have approved this? Then you can go back and say, here's the 5 selectmen, that's, and here's the 7 finance committee members. Because you can go back to see the original of that to see exactly who signed off on it.
yep. I think that's kind of why we're also having a discussion on about policies right now. Certainly at any meeting you have, you can feel free to talk about policies and make suggestions to the select board. But ultimately, it's gonna be them that's responsible for these policies and carrying it out, and town staff, on their behalf, so.
How was it accepted by the selectmen the other night?
Well, it was an initial review, and I kind of just went over a little bit more detailed than what I just did now, talking about some information specifically in some policies. So the select board has a meeting review process. There's a lot of policies here that they want to dig into, so they kind of did a first pass, and we'll do a little bit more in depth at a future meeting.
The reserve fund,
Yep.
what page is that located on? I didn't have the chance to read.
10, page 10.
Page 10? That's what I was looking for, I didn't see it called out.
And there's already some typos that were pointed out from a selectman earlier today, so obviously there's a reason why these are
It's a
in
draft.
draft form.
How dare you?
I just see free cash, not reserve.
I don't see a reserve.
Well, I would assume,
Financial reserve, so it's got free cash, stabilization funds, and overlay surplus.
I'm
Pages
asking
10
for the
and 11.
reserve fund that is for the finance committee, that takes care of that's the one that we have oversight on to help with last minute glimpses.
Yeah, so that wasn't incorporated as a part of this policy package. As you know, finance committee reserve funds are rooted in general laws. So we can certainly put that in here. I think it's also in your recently accepted bylaw at the special town meeting, so we can certainly put it in a policy for the reserve
Well,
fund.
the policy that we have currently has that.
Okay, I'll put it in then.
So that was the thing, that's the one thing I was looking for, cause I was like, okay,
What's the difference if they did a bylaw change and took a power away from us?
no, but we still have.
No, it's in the bylaw.
The reserve fund is still ours,
If they have a bylaw, it doesn't necessarily mean that's true.
Mass General Law says.
It's Mass General Law, yeah. So candidly, you don't even need a policy. I don't know why you have one if you have it rooted in Mass General Law. But
Well, it's because it says, should be equal to approximately 1% total general fund, less, we try to put in there so that there was money put aside so that it couldn't just be.
Yep.
the only thing I was gonna say, I would assume that this is gonna give everybody a chance to really look at this. It's not gonna be done in the next short, I mean, this one, when this one was done, Margaret gave us this one originally, right? I mean, it took 3 years to get this one done.
Yeah, I don't wanna take 3 years. We need.
No, I'm
policies
just
that-
saying, you can't, that's how government works, though. You gotta have a chance to review and let everybody have their
She
chance
had
to
a
look
lot
at it.
of other bigger things that she was trying to do, being the first
I
one.
understand that,
on
I'm
board.
just saying, it's not a
So
2-week item.
when are you expecting to put this financial policy in, sir?
I'd like to have it done by the end of the fiscal year, so we roll into the new fiscal year with a policy document. Our auditors are also asking and encouraging us to implement some additional policies and asking what our adherence to our current policies are, so it's not just me saying we need policies, it's people above me from a regulatory perspective, so. And 2 of my bosses are in the room too, and they've been asking for policies too, so. I would ask also what the board as a whole, what their timeline is.
I just want to point out one thing, and this is a small thing.
Sure.
But I was always taught that when you write down policies, you don't put, like, we have entering payroll data in Harper's. In 5 more years, we might change to ADP, we might change to Paylocity, we might change to Paychecks. We should say into the payroll system, that way you don't have to rewrite it every single time it changes. I'm not saying we're going to, but
It's more general.
Practice.
yeah,
Sure.
practice is to write it more generally than specific.
Yep.
Generally, you wanna do that with titles for positions too, and things like
Right,
that.
Right, you
Exactly.
don't call person up.
Just remind me which policy that is.
That's on page 31. The treasurer collector
So
is responsible
disbursements,
for.
Okay. Yep.
So, this is a courtesy, right? So, I think the best course of action at this point, you know, this is a large document, and we're obviously not gonna go through the whole thing tonight. There's no point in, even thinking that. But if anyone has interest in going through this, please do so on, you know, whenever you get time. And I would, come up with a list of questions and send it to, why don't we, everyone send it to me and I'll aggregate and then put them all to the town administrator's office. And if we get enough questions and it's controversial questions, we can schedule a meeting about it. If they're simple, small changes, then we might not need to. Does that make sense? Anyone opposed to that?
The only problem with submitting them that way is the public doesn't hear them.
Yeah, we could just post the email as a meeting minutes.
Or the compilation, once you get that together, post that.
I think the public cares.
It doesn't make a difference.
Well, I'm
what
just-
it
No,
does.
she's right, she's right.
But the thing is you have to have it open to have.
Transparent.
a
I understand
transparency.
that, but
So
should
whether
be
they
there.
care or not, if there's one person out there that cares and we're sending it and they don't hear it, then they don't have the right to come to a meeting to hear the
so we can
conversations.
post a list of questions to our.
Yep, to our website there, and again, if there's many questions, if there's any controversial questions or anything that needs discussion, we can obviously then have a meeting and we'll go from there.
If
So,
they're
yes.
typos or something, they don't mean, you know, they're not,
Right.
then that
Yeah,
can just go
typos
to
can
them.
just be
But
correction.
whatever he aggregates, so now next meeting, you can say, here's the questions that went to them, we can talk about them if we need to.
Yep.
And it's public record, then when it's in our, like you said, in our minutes.
No, she's 100%. There's nothing wrong with posting the FAQ of questions that we
Right.
submit
Absolutely.
to the interweb.
Yep.
We're not hiding anything, that's for sure. Cool, okay. Anything else on this financial policy other than obviously any future questions to come? Anything else?
Austin, the version that we looked at last fall, I guess it was, you said most of that has been incorporated into this.
Yeah, I mean, well, I wouldn't say word for word, but I think the principle of some of them have been incorporated into. They may have different titles, different language, but I tried to mesh them as much as possible. Obviously, there was, some things that were missed, like the reserve fund, but, and I'm sure that there's others. So in the course of your review, if you see something, but yes.
It was emailed to us on 8:30. August 30th.
The one that we looked at
The
previously.
original, yeah.
Oh, I was gonna say, we got this that long ago?
Not this one.
The old
This one, the old one.
version.
This one's a couple weeks ago.
Yeah. That makes more sense.
No, this one's just
Couple of days.
a couple of
Couple
days
days
ago.
ago.
Okay. All right, let's move on to FY25 budget discussion. Other related matters. So, first off, I want to, just bring up the, was it last week? Was it only last week? I guess 2 weeks ago, right? February 12th was 2 weeks
week.
ago?
That's Thursday.
It's 10 days ago.
Last Monday.
Last Monday.
Monday, okay, that makes sense. Okay. So we did a little bit different. We had basically all of the departments there except for a select few that weren't there. Just looking for some quick feedback as to how people liked it, didn't like it, how people thought it compared to how we've done in the past. Just looking for kind of any feedback and, so we can just kind of get direction on going forward to, next year as well. So start with that. Any feedback whatsoever.
Well, from a time perspective, it was nice to get it done in a lot less time than it's taken us in the past. I kind of felt a little bit that, it's my recollection, and my recollection is not always right, that in the last couple of years, when we've had the departments in front of us, at that point, we already had a better idea of what our final budget number was, because I felt at that meeting last week that everything seemed fine, and I have this feeling of impending doom that in the next 3 weeks, we're gonna find that everything's not fine. And I don't know if that means we're gonna need to bring some of those departments back, or how we're gonna approach that, but that was just sort of my take on it.
I guess you have a great question. How are we gonna balance everything? It's gonna be Austin, right? The way that so far, we're gonna maybe guide them, help them. But I'm not gonna tell them if there are cuts, what to do. So how will we get to that next step? Expanding on what Ted said. If we're gonna use a ton of free cash based on things, where are we going with this? Because where's the next step? What's Austin gonna do if we're off by $200,000? And Pete had those concerns at the last meeting that, all right, so we're gonna use a ton of free cash, which we may or may not think is a good idea, but how do we get past, we're $200,000 out of whack and we have to use free cash? So how do we, as a finance committee, get to the next step?
So what's our process? Our process is that we go through and we understand what the spending is, where it is, what the revenues are, where it's coming from, and what the difference is. And we never really go through, there was always been the conversation around free cash. There was always the hope that we didn't have to spend the free cash. But our only option was to either recommend approval or not recommend approval. I don't know that we've ever decided that we're the ones that would make that decision as to what the numbers would be. It's always left with the town administrator.
Remember the Ron years?
No, that's different because that was Ron.
We make our recommendation based on what we think is the right numbers, and if we make we don't say, look, you gotta cut $20 here and $30. We went back to work with the town administrator and say, look, we really need to look at cutting whatever here, or that's what our opinion is, because that's our job. And then he's gotta look at it and say, all right, well, where can we do that? And we gotta work together doing it.
What if there's not what if the feeling is there's no possibility to do that?
Well, then, I gave you that sheet that came out of the state.
Association for Financial.
It says in there, it's the legislative branch, the executive branch, and it comes to the finance board. And the finance board to make a recommendation. If we don't like the budget or we think there should be something cut, when we go to town meeting to present the budget, we tell the people, this is what we feel should be there. They can say, I'm not saying it adversely, I'm just saying, other things could be said, but.
So I'm not sure that I remember. Have we ever told them have we ever gone to town meeting and told them what the number would be? Karen, you might know that.
For what?
For anything, for the budget. The budget comes in at $28 million. Do we ever tell the town that it should be $27,750,000.
Before the town sees it, we've already been through that,
Right.
going
But
through and
not-
making cuts.
But not at town meeting.
No, cause the
That's-
last number of years, we've agreed on that bottom line being what we felt was the best we could do.
One of
and
the
it went to town
iterations of the
meeting.
budget, because we used to do several.
Okay, all right, okay.
So
Yes.
here's the question then. He thinks, and to use Peter's example, the finance committee feels that $250,000 of free cash is too much.
Right.
Austin says it's good, he's gonna go forward with that. Where do we part ways here? How-
Yeah,
That'd be
like what
the-
you just said, we discuss it, and if we don't agree with it, we gotta tell him or send him a note from the finance committee saying that's not something we'd like to see done for the town.
We just wouldn't agree with it at town.
Tell me.
So we would, in our discussion on the articles, we would not recommend approval.
Correct.
That's what I was.
Which we would hope that they don't come to that, cause I feel like we would be working together to get to a point where it's not gonna be like
In all the
that,
years,
but.
on all the years I've sat on this committee, the only article on the annual town meeting for the budget that the finance committee has ever recommended unfavorable on has been the school budget when they've, for the extra piece.
Yeah.
Yes.
But that's also because the finance committee has almost always been the one doing the budget for the most part. I mean, obviously, there's been times where it's been more amicable and more hands-off, but it's always been a large part by the finance committee. This is kind of the first year where it's more, it's not in our ball court, right? Well, is that right? In our court.
I don't know if I agree with that, because I think it's being done better on the other side, that's the biggest part of it.
Yeah,
Being done and put together the way it should have been done the last 7 or 8 years, or 5 or
Right.
6, whatever.
So what happens, we get to the floor in town meeting, you know, we have $200,000 in free cash, someone stands up and we say, okay, yeah, we agree with that. Someone stands up and goes, no, I don't like it, and the whole town votes against it.
and it fails.
Well, they
It
can't
fails, and then what do you do on the floor you can't go without a budget, right?
Scramble.
We have
Well,
until
you
June
can, yeah,
30th,
you can go for.
Yeah, but don't you have to go to another town meeting to have
Yep.
a
Oh,
vote?
Yeah.
Probably.
which is why we've have we ever gone with just one budget? I don't think so.
Well,
But we've, you know,
But this is, did something change, or is it still the 620, 269?
It's lower.
455,
Yeah,
I think.
so, a message that was sent to the finance committee a couple weeks ago now at this point. We, after looking a little bit deeper into motor vehicle excise, I was a little too conservative. The most recent commitment came in much higher. So we boosted motor vehicle excise up to, let me stall for a second. 1.65 million, it was at 1.5 something million. And also, Bay Path came in about $20,000 lower. They submitted their proposed budget to the school committee a couple weeks ago. So I sent an update and a revised
Okay,
financial
the
plan.
budget that's on the website, does that have the new numbers?
Not yet.
No, okay. So we're looking at 450?
454,
Yeah,
And free
455.
cash?
It's called 455.
454, 274.
It's free cash.
To balance the
The
budget.
balanced budget.
So,
correct.
well, that would be my question. If the philosophy is that the budget needs to be balanced, if we use free cash, is in fact the budget balanced? It's equal, revenues and expenses are equal at that point, but is the budget balanced? Because I'm thinking that one-time expenses, like free cash, means that we're creating revenues that we don't have
Yeah,
by going into the savings account.
we're creating revenues that we can't recreate in future years.
Right, we're
not-
making a
we're not
whole
creating
thing.
balanced.
We're using our savings
We're
account.
using money we have, we're not creating revenues we don't have.
No,
We're
I'm not
creating things
talking
that
about
we'll
money
have
we
in the future.
have, because we have reserve funds and everything that we could go and raid as well. I'm talking about the concept there is that if you have a balanced budget, your expenses and your revenues are the same. And if they're not, then there's the one thing that you can adjust, which is the expenses. And then that gets it balanced. Using free cash or going in to use a reserve fund, taking money out of there, doesn't balance the budget. It covers the expenses.
No, because.
But have we done the same thing every year?
Oh, yeah, not,
No, but I
not
think it-
disputing
I-
that.
see, I-
Not
it does,
disputing
absolutely.
that.
So-
Absolutely
And
right.
that gives you a deficit you've already starting off with for the next year.
That's right.
We've said
which
that
is-
every year.
Which is the problem.
But the
But free
budget
cash,
is balanced.
yes, free
At the end
cash,
of, the budget is
Yes.
balanced, Peter. I'm not saying going forward it isn't.
so if.
I'm not arguing your point, but
In
I'm
strict
saying,
accounting terms, it's a
It's-
it's a
it's
it's
balanced.
it's a reallocation from balance sheet to revenue adjustment.
And I understand that, but the whole idea of having the budget balanced is that you have the fixed number, which is your income, and then you have the expenses. And from what I understood, the MMA, is that the book,
The Association of Town Finance Committees.
that one? That it's the town administration that brings in a balanced budget. Now, it would be my opinion, it's only my opinion, that a budget is balanced if your revenues, your in and out, your inflow, outflow equal. And using free cash isn't an inflow, it's already there. It's something that theoretically would be used for something else, and we're saying, no, we're not gonna do that. The town shouldn't do that, they should use it for operating expenses. And to Tommy's point, it is going to not be available the next year. Now, I can see using free cash for something like, next year, the Heights are gonna come in and they're gonna have $500,000 worth of revenue that we didn't have this year. Okay, I can see that. We use it this year, the next year, we're expecting that money comes in and we're gonna be golden going forward. But if we don't have that plan, so all I'm really looking at is what's the plan? When we come down to use of free cash, what's the plan and how it's gonna be accommodated?
Well, first of all, what we've been, since I've been on this committee, because I know we took a vote and we just consensus, we decided that we would try not to be over 150. That's what we are, because we knew that we'd get free cash, and a lot of times that was a good number because we had free cash, so we said either 150 or less.
Yeah.
And that's been for a number of years, so that's the reason we've been kind of sticking with that. We've been told by everybody, free cash is not we all know that. We
Yeah.
all know it's not a good thing to
Everybody knows
use,
that.
and we keep getting told that.
Yeah.
And then we keep getting told we shouldn't be over X amount or whatever, so.
Yeah, I don't.
In Austin,
yeah.
you have, since you got here, beat it into us that free cash is not a good use for the budget, it's not a good use for the budget. And
not.
this- And this is the highest amount that I believe we've ever used for free cash to balance a budget.
Well,
I think we've used I think we've used a lot more free cash than we realize, because we appropriate some at an annual town meeting, and then we make up the difference at a special town meeting. So I went through our tax recaps for the past 10 years. We used 1.8, almost 1.9 million in free cash to reduce the tax rate. To give you reference, in an override year, we used $252,000 of free cash in an override year. We left $450,000 in excess levy capacity. That excess levy capacity was used up this year. You can guess by which entity. FY '23, 183,000. FY '22, 76. FY '21, 405,000. FY '20, 150,000. FY '19, 199. 18 and 17, 150,000. All that adds up to about 1.8 million. We've used a lot more for capital projects. We've used in total, between reducing the tax rate and for capital and some other previous bills, 4.8 million in free cash. So we've spent a lot more free cash than I think we realize, because it's easy to look at a budget document and see $50,000 used at annual, but if we go to the special and we use 200.
Yeah, but that wasn't the balanced budgets, was it? That was to do certain projects.
No, not always. I think there was a year, I think when Mike Nicholson was here, I think you went and used $200,000 for the budget.
Damn, Mike.
So,
Yeah, well, no, we did a few times.
That was our highest year, was 400.
But we had to do that some couple of years.
so
'cause
we're
it
only
wasn't the
$50,000
income.
short without it, and I'll just wanna mention on the school assessments, we already know on Wachusett, we already know two of the figures. We know minimum local contributions, so what you have in what I sent in a subsequent email was there. I know the debt service figure, And the assumptions that I made for transportation was 11% increase, that's in my assumptions. And I made a 10% increase on the operational assessment based off of the average since FY17. So if transportation is 11%, which I feel pretty confident in that because that was presented at a school committee meeting. If the only thing I'm wrong on is the operational assessment, which again has averaged 10% since FY17, I'm thinking it'll be lower, so I'm thinking we'll be in a slightly better position, net position overall for the town. I'm hoping it comes in a little bit lower, so that means our use of free cash, my proposed use of free cash will go down slightly. So, I mean, I don't disagree, it's a lot of money, I don't feel comfortable, and to your point, Karen, I agree, it's certainly not a best practice, but in a position with limited revenue, we really don't have a lot of other options, especially where we just restored services on the expense side.
I think that's my kind of piece here is I think you're all 100% correct. Use of free cash, use of one time is not a good practice. By policy, I think it does balance the budget to your point. I think your opinion is correct, but the overall policy, it's balanced according to the policy, right? But you're not wrong in what you're saying that using free cash is not a good idea.
We've covered the liability.
Right.
It's
So
a way to do it.
I think what Austin just said is that coming off of a year of a override where we said we were going to have services for X number of years, obviously wrong, right? We can't go and take those away. I honestly don't think.
Why are we wrong? Cause something we wanted to go 1.5. Hear me out. And it started at 1. Then we went, wow, we could go 1.5, and everybody was like, woo. And then we settled on 2, and we were gonna go a couple of years. And a former selectman said, maybe we should go to 3.
Yeah.
And then when we settled on 2, we felt pretty good. But so where was the disconnect?
I don't
Because
remember it
we
ever
went-
being 1. Was it 1?
I thought we started off low,
So
and then we worked our way up.
the number that Gary had presented as the needed number, I believe, was 1.8-ish.
So if we were, even
So
if
we
we
went up to
said,
2.
so we went to 2.
Yep.
But my feeling, there's some disconnect here that immediately after, we have to do what we're doing. And we, people in this room, sold that to the townspeople over there at the here and in different places, and now it's like completely blown away. So there's some disconnect that I can't figure out, and does anyone know why?
Well, I don't know that. I mean, yes, we're higher than what we had, but I don't know that I would say it's blown away. We're talking $400,000 on a $2 million override. That's 20%. I mean, it's not small, but it's also not I don't know that I would call it blown away.
It should have covered, you would think the override should be covering our budget for this year.
Well, that's my question. I thought, we optimistically thought 3 to 5 years.
Right.
Then by the end of it, we were like, ooh.
Well, the school
But
total
it's not even a
increase was
year.
what?
This, between Wachusett and Bay Path
Sure.
is $892,000.
So that's 400 right there. Because in my thing, I had 450,000 or 500,000.
Exactly, that's what I'm going.
So I mean, the school is double what
Just the minimum local contribution alone between the two, remember, that's the state number that we can't change, is $597,000
Increase.
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 Right. So, but that was the questions all along. As we were talking to people and I don't know if it was Austin that had made the point at one of those meetings. He said, well, tell me what the school budget is gonna be.
Yeah.
And so we could do a better job at it.
Yeah.
Okay,
You
so,
optimistically added in, I'm amazed that it's already gone. You were very conservative and you said that.
Yeah, I mean, a $500,000 increase in a year-over-year budget for a school of, I think the total school budget is what, 10, 12 million total?
No, 16.
15.
16 for Wachusett.
This year?
Yeah, 16 million.
I don't know. I don't really know.
Alright,
So here's I guess the point is, as we go through this, I guess it would be the next round. What do we want to provide as guidance to Austin? I mean, right now, we're looking at $450,000 being used to quote unquote, balance the budget. And we would normally bring in another budget number that would not use that number. So how do we want to advise Austin to be able to go ahead and,
So
Trying to comment.
I think that until we know what the education number is, there's no point in us putting out too much of a dictation, right?
okay,
That's my opinion. If somebody has a different thought, then I'm happy to hear it, but, if we start picking things away and start talking about this going crazy, you know, if the school comes in another 500,000, then it's not even gonna be a conversation, right? So, you know, if they come in $200,000 shorter, then, you know, we're only spending $250 in free, so I think that until we know that number, it's,
no, but the practical aspect of it is that we know, right now it's 450. We don't know what the school's gonna come in at. It could be, that could be $1 million, but that's a different story. But from the perspective of what the expectation is that we would have two numbers. We would have the number that has the 450,000 in there as a balancing number for the budget. But there should also be, whatever that number turns out to be, 300,000, 100,000, $1 million, whatever's required, we should have, Austin should be prepared to be able to address that number and what would be required. I think we're gonna have to tell folks that. If it comes in, if it's $1 million that we've gotta cut out of this budget, we've gotta be prepared to tell folks what it's
Even
gonna
if it's
be.
$454,000, it's still a lot.
Right.
Even if it's
We're gonna know that
250,
number
it's
in what?
still a lot.
2 weeks.
2 weeks, 2 weeks, right? So the school, Wachusett budget is gonna be what, 2 weeks?
The 29th we'll have
I
our,
go
24th.
next week, is that when they're gonna give us the number?
what do they, so what happens at
Not
that?
typically, it's
this
just
could be
a,
different.
Generality.
it's
This will
just
be my first time with
generalities and
it
it's,
close.
and it's just everyone telling them, you know, we're having tough financial times. And again, it's all gonna depend, cause this is a brand new.
Right.
And so it's slightly different, but it used to be, it was always, we're in tough financial times. Well, yes, we understand that, we will take
are
that
too.
advisement.
Give us more money.
Screw you, and here's where it is, you know, in 2 more weeks. I
Did you
get it,
pass
so-
an override last year?
don't you think
So,
that they
so
don't know that?
if not next Thursday, then March 16th, 14th.
Right.
Well, the 14th, we're meeting with Wachusett,
Right.
Correct, and then the following week,
and
I
they're gonna
believe-
tell us what they're gonna spend.
Yeah, so that makes me,
Well, because the school
Think-
committee, I believe, is voting on it that Monday, the 11th.
yeah, so
So
we'll
we
know a
know
little
it
bit
sooner
before
than
then.
that.
And then we have a meeting the following week as well,
Second.
posted.
21st.
So I think at that point, that's when we dictate what we wanna do going forward.
We could have an idea tonight, but I don't know what we
That's the
would
best
say.
way to do it.
Well, again, you know, and you guys, you know, obviously chime in and have an opinion and let me know, but I think that we stated last year that we were gonna do an override to bring the services. If we cut those services that we just brought back, I think we're doing a huge disservice to the town. And I get it, I don't wanna use free cash either, I don't think anyone does, but making cuts is not the direction we need to go. I think there is upside going into the future. To your point, the Heights is going to come online at some point and start bringing additional revenue to the town. Unfortunately, I have no doubt in my mind that it will not cover any, like, the increases going forward, right? It's not going to cover one for one. But it will give relief, right? It has to.
It depends, we got 19,
So-
how many new, what do we have, 19 new kids into the Wachusett system this year?
No, I don't think it was that much.
No, that was 19 for down at Devereux.
Devereux.
It was
Okay.
14 for Wachusett and 13 for Bay Path.
Okay, so those are all new kids coming in, whether it be Wachusett or for Bay Path, that's new kids coming in. And that's not just necessarily new houses, that could be just changeovers. So we can't predict how that's gonna work, no matter how much we'd like to say, oh, no, this isn't gonna happen. We don't know from
Well,
year
we
to
already
year.
know in 19, next year.
No, if they're still around.
Or
that's
it might be
not
more,
October,
it
right?
might be more, we don't know. But I can say from myself, I'm uncomfortable using $454,000 of free cash.
So what are you comfortable with?
You know, truthfully, we all just saw a huge increase in our tax bill, and then to see in my time, this is the highest amount we've ever used in free cash to balance the budget at a town meeting.
And we're talking, we're not
At
necessarily.
one town meeting.
At one town meeting,
Right,
yes, at one town meeting.
And we're
So the
not-
thing is, this is the one where people see it.
Right.
It's a number, they're going to see it.
And we're really not talking about making any changes. It may well be the town floor that says, I don't agree, I agree with Karen, that's too much money, so we have to be prepared for how we're gonna deal with it. I understand what you're saying about cutting services, that we just added back. So what's the plan? What is the plan if the town floor says no?
So my question is, there's no capital items in the budget, right, in the budget, operating budget? I mean, are there any big purchased items that are budgeted in?
Big, no, there's, I think the change in the CIPC policy was to include the police cruiser lease.
Right, we talked
So
about,
there's,
basically, I think we've done that the last several
yeah,
years.
so that's in the, police budget, and also the animal control vehicle is leased, but
Yeah.
no
yeah,
other
yeah.
capital items, no.
So on that, yeah, I understand. So what, in capital items coming up this year, what is proposed to be put on the warrant, and where is that money coming from?
Oh, there's a lot.
So most of them are free, most of them are ARPA or free cash or grant funds. The largest is, asking for borrowing authorization for a ladder truck.
Okay, so where would
And-
that money come from?
That would come from borrowing, so that would be debt service, and the thought is to exclude it.
I was gonna say debt.
Debt, well, no, I understand debt service, but it's gonna be a debt exclusion, is it?
Yeah, that would be the request. Yep,
Okay,
which would be a ballot initiative. Ultimately, I think it's a little early to suggest that that's going to happen, because ultimately the board will have to vote to include that on the ballot.
no, I understand, I'm just,
Yeah.
okay.
But that's in the proposed capital plan.
Okay, so the next question I'd have then, so on articles that you foresee are being proposed for this meeting, is there a list of those? Is that I mean, sometimes we don't get those till the week before, or 2 weeks before, and it's like, how do you look at them and, you know, the warrant closes 2 weeks before,
So those are in your budget book, the capital plan is in your budget book, so for FY '25, $2.4 million in the capital budget for this year. 322,000 of that is from ARPA, 210,000 is from water and sewer retained earnings, 1.85 million is from general fund bonds, and $60,000 would be repurposing of prior approved articles.
You
And
said that's in there.
That's in there,
Okay.
yep, around page 70 something.
Is that the end of the ARPA money?
No. Nope. There's still about between previously authorized projects and authorized isn't the right word, obligated projects, and essentially the free money that hasn't been obligated yet, there's about $1 million in ARPA.
I have two questions. I believe at the special town meeting in the fall, we did not do anything with free cash.
Correct.
Is that put us in a different position going into the annual? Is that why this number is larger than we've seen in the past? Or is there no relation between the two?
No, so to me, my personal opinion, and the reason why I recommended not having special town meeting as a spending town meeting is free cash is generally used for capital projects, or in some cases to offset the tax rate, right? So if you're talking about building a capital budget, spending free cash in the fall would have been very early. We were in the midst of the capital planning process and also the budget preparation process. So it's just a change of practice for when we are proposing to spend free cash rather than from the fall to the actual typical spending town meeting, which is the annual.
So do we currently have a balance of free cash right now?
$757 and $800,000.
So the 454, whatever number right now would not have been any different had we spent free cash at the fall town meeting.
Well, if we spent all of free cash,
We wouldn't have any.
we would be in a much more challenging position because we wouldn't have free cash to utilize to reduce the tax rate.
But really, it wouldn't have changed.
Yeah.
There's nothing that impacts that. There's nothing directly correlated.
So then my second question is, looking at this proposed policy for free cash use here in this financial, it seems to me that the amount we're looking seems out of whack with that. Am I not interpreting that correctly?
Yeah, so I don't believe that the policy speaks to use of free cash for operating budget. The policy calls for setting aside, now actually I've made some revisions internally, I don't think those have been reflected to you, but to set aside 25% of free cash. Essentially what has been done in previous years, you guys would set aside $150,000 to essentially maintain in free cash for next year. I'm proposing to change that from a dollar value to a percent value, so it varies each year. And the concept of that is just to keep attempting to build your free cash. And then there's also some other requirements, but I don't think it speaks to utilizing it in terms of offsetting the tax rate.
Okay, so nothing we're doing here is flies in the face of that.
No, it's just different. It's a different practice. I think once we solidify what the free cash for the budget, if any, is going to be used, it is my intent to also maintain within the policy the standard practice of putting 5% for capital, 5% for general stabilization, and 5% for the OPEB trust fund, which has been done in previous years as well.
Yeah, it does say 25% or 250,000, which would mean that if we did use 450 for this particular budget, right, we have 750, and we'll have some cash left over from this year, theoretically, that we would be within that 250 number of going into really using that. So we, according to this policy, we are following this policy.
And, I just want to remind everyone too, we also,
That
I
on page 10?
think it's a little early to talk about what the figure would be, but I just want to remind folks that, we also will have a figure closer to the end of the third quarter for what the potential replenishment of free cash is from FY '24. So looking at our excess revenues and looking at any turnbacks from departmental budgets too. So I anticipate we'll have some sort of a figure to inform the board and finance committee at that point. I already know next year's free cash will at least be $95,000 because we have a grant fund that was supposed to be closed out this year and it wasn't. So that will be, and that's actually in one of your special revenues, you see that. So that'll already be, we already know that that's going to be free cash next year. Close out a bunch of articles, you're all set.
Done.
It's like you never used
Close
it.
out a bunch of articles, you'll be $100,000
Yeah,
to
that's
the
right.
better.
Yeah.
Again, not that, that's not the best, and we all agree on that. I don't think anyone's arguing that this is where we want to be. And I think that the future is not, it's not perfect either. I don't think there's a great plan going forward. I know there's, and I had asked Austin to put together just kind of what the future, what positives we see going into the future. I know that the Heights was one of them. We also have the assessment stuff going on, which will increase revenues by some amount. No idea how much that is, right? There's a couple other ones that I can't recall now. So there's a few things that have positive futures to them, but again, I go back to, it's not gonna offset the increased expenses. We know that, right? So there's positives going forward, but there's just as much negatives going forward. But I don't think that's been any different in any other year.
Makes it a challenging job.
$408,000 was insurmountable to try to get out of this town when we used $408,000. It was very difficult to get that out of, that was a very, very painful budget year. And that's fine. You can do that next year with the selectmen, then that's fine if that's what you wanna do. But I know how painful that 408 was, and I wouldn't want anyone else to have to go through that again. That was very painful.
That was wrong, right?
That was his first year, yes, and we dumped it in our laps.
No, I understand.
Because the problem comes in, you're paying more in taxes, and all we're doing is getting level services. We're not getting any more for what we're paying for.
Well, so the additional $205,000 from free cash at the town meeting passed 27-2.
Because we didn't, very long convoluted story, you know, I can go into it in much more detail, but we had no choice at that point.
Gotcha. So it was a
But that
challenging
made
budget preparation
Right,
season. But town meeting it passed pretty
that's what she's
easily.
talking about.
Right,
Gotcha.
we had to do that to balance the budget.
Right.
Gotcha.
We expected other things to occur that didn't occur.
Yeah.
So the problem is that made it $408,000, and to pull that out.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Well, I mean, the challenge we're always gonna have, being an educational town, 60% of our budget is for education. You know, even 2% of a big number is a big number. So when Wachusett is 4.88% of 15 million, that's, as you know, it's a big number. So when our available revenue, I think overall for this year, available new revenue was $616,000. You know, we're in a very tough position being a regional school district town.
So from the perspective of towns, other conversations with other TAs in the 5 towns, what are you hearing from them? Are they happy with what they see coming out of the school, and they're just chomping at the bit to approve that stuff, or what?
I don't know. I mean, it seems like in the conversations, every town is finally starting to hit their capacity, especially on the tax levy side.
Okay.
You know, Paxton is an example of a community that historically uses a lot of free cash. So that, you know, their practice is a little bit different than a Rutland or a Holden, for example. So, you know, I don't think there's consistency for how we are for our revenue sources, but the overall sentiment, and this is not just a Wachusett. I mean, Hubbardston is dealing with it right now with their school district with a 15% educational increase. My previous community is asking for a $6 million override, and most of that is for the schools this year, and that's a very wealthy community. So it's a structural issue that we have with the way that regional schools are funded. They are not under the 2.5 cap like we are for revenue. So that's a long-term challenge that there's been a lot of solutions, but not necessarily a lot of action on the state
Well,
level.
that's a legislative
Yeah.
change.
But even if a school wasn't regionalized, there's no school right now that could possibly stick to a 2.5% increase without making substantial cuts with inflation. I mean, there's just no way you could do that.
Well, yeah, but you have you actually have a lot more control about
Yeah,
where
more pressure that
where
you
the
can put
figures
on
are.
them, but that just means, so you might be cutting the dollars, but you're just reducing the educational effectiveness of your community. I mean, you're not really making a positive step forward, you're just,
Right, but you
screwing
can
the
manage, it's a
future.
department of the town, so you can manage it
Yeah.
a little bit easier.
yeah, you can manage it, you can
Than,
pressure it,
you know, than
but
when we are.
that doesn't mean it's a good thing to do either.
Right. But at least they kind of still fall under the, you know, the cap of where we are, you know, for 2.5, so.
So right now, we kinda hammered this pretty good. I think we should get to that meeting with the school, cause you're gonna tell us how much money, then we'll have a good number, and we can talk about it after that.
Yeah,
Yep, I think that's the right
Go from there.
that's the next step, obviously, yeah.
Unless, is there something we wanna say to Wachusett or to them when they come in on the 14th? That's kinda what I said last meeting, if we had any, but I don't know what we're gonna be able to tell them, because the budget's,
Well, it's approved, yeah, it's
gonna be
approved
approved
by
at
the
that
11th anyway, right, so.
and that's why I said a couple meetings ago, it won't be a discussion, it's gonna be a presentation, is all it's gonna be.
That's how it always
Right,
is.
next Thursday is the open roundtable discussion, but I think truthfully at that point, the budget's done.
Dog and pony.
Because you can't possibly make big changes, anything sizable changes in whatever.
Well, and the fact is that, last years that that's done, all the towns have asked for some changes and they just don't
doesn't
do it.
happen.
I know.
Well, you're also, you're, to your point, there's not enough time, right? Cause you're displaying to a small population of the community. And then those people are supposed to get the word out that change needs to happen. They'd have to tell all these people in town so that the general consensus is to turn the budget down, right? So like, it's just an impossible situation.
And unfortunately, nobody sticks together.
No.
Rutland fights it one way, Sterling fights it the other. It's difficult. Holden says, bring it on, we'll take it.
We had
Yeah,
one
but
year where we
Holden's
did go with
Not
Paxton,
so good anymore.
and we did get some
Yeah,
concessions.
but it's really rare.
I went with Lynn
Oh, yeah.
and Ted,
We didn't get anywhere.
and we tried to build consensus in Sterling. Nope, we're fine.
Yep.
And now they cry, good luck.
Can I ask just on, so I told you that 2 of the assessment numbers for what you said, we'd know. The other 2, I made some assumptions, so that 11% for transportation. But I wanna ask, so I made a 10% assumption for the operational assessment. Do you think that that's a good number? Should it be higher? Should it be lower? Because
Last year, they came in telling us they were gonna be looking for a lot more than what they had been, because budgets weren't done properly for so many years. That's what they came in saying last year. I can't tell you how they'll come in. I can't get in their head, but they did say last year that there were a lot of issues with how budgets were done previously under the previous administration. So there were gonna be a lot of things that had to be corrected and adjusted, so.
But you would also hope that the new administration has found, I'll call it waste, and maybe has trimmed fat. You would hope.
Well, that was a conversation that I had with the superintendent. What efficiencies have they put in place amongst the 5 towns? And his reaction was none, because they all wanna operate on their own.
None. It's like Seth saying the other night, it'd be great if we had a regional fire department. We don't all need $100 or $1 million ladder truck or a $2 million ladder truck.
Right,
Very parochial, it's not happening.
right. So to answer your question, in my opinion, answering the question is, your number is as good as anything, until we know for sure.
Been the
well,
average in
that's
the last few years, so
what
it'll-
essentially the definition of an assumption is, right?
I mean,
But-
honestly,
So, I'm asking, do you want me to modify that assumption? Higher, lower, is 10% safe? I mean, like I said, that was
We
an
could reach out
average.
to some of our school committee members, because they should be able to tell us somewhat, in theory.
But if they get permission to talk to them.
Right, if they're allowed to talk.
I would say that 10 seems like it's a high number. Is it realistic? Probably. But
I
that
think
a high
I
number.
bet you it's gonna be closer to 12 to 15, but that's what my gut says. Because,
something-
because their health insurance is gonna go up. It always does,
They're in the contract year.
and, yep, and brand new, and they already warned us last year.
Yeah, they did say, the superintendent did say, there's a lot of things that they should have been doing, but that they didn't, they couldn't. And they're going to be expecting
The
to pick that up.
the business manager, she deserves a 15% increase for everything she's been doing.
Not this year, next year.
But,
Okay.
I would
I'll
say
keep it
just
as
wait
is
till
for
after
now.
our meeting and see where you're at,
Yeah.
right?
It's as good as any number.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, yep.
So I have another, so have you got any inkling or have you heard anything about with on the state level, with the revenues going down or whatever these articles have been in the paper, says that they're gonna cut funds different places because it's not as much as they were expecting? Is that gonna affect the school numbers or?
So the governor is claiming in her budget, well, in her budget proposal, she fully funded the Student Opportunity Act. But, you know, there's aspects of educational funding that aren't necessarily fully funded. So this year, regional transportation reimbursement is 90%. I think the governor's budget proposal drops it to 80%. So there's some things that are lower, some things are slightly higher. Apparently there's more rural school aid, but apparently we're not considered a rural school. So the cherry sheet figures showed a modest increase in their chapter 70, but nothing substantial. I mean, it's going to the more rural school districts, so. But I haven't seen any substantial cuts.
And isn't this a transportation year for Wachusett as well? The bus contract?
Yeah, they re-signed a contract,
Do we know how much that went up?
11%,
Oh,
which is I put that in my
So
transportation.
11% for this year, do we know it's a multi-year, right?
Yeah, I think it's 5.5 next year.
Oh, okay.
They just recently approved it at their school committee meeting, I think, right? Yeah.
What did they agree for a contract, Lee? You've been going to those meetings.
For what?
Did they agree on their contract yet?
For which contract?
Teachers.
I think the teachers have executed one. I was actually just looking at their meeting minutes. Let me see.
But on the general government side, the unrestricted general government aid was a modest increase, nothing substantial, but our assessments also went up, so we didn't really see a substantial increase.
They gave us more and charged us more.
Yeah,
than they
exactly,
did.
yeah.
That's, yeah.
They got it.
I was like, I saw that, oh yeah, you get this, but
Yeah.
we're gonna get it back.
But I mean, luckily it's not a huge revenue source for us, so.
I bring this up I brought this up a couple of times. Has anyone looked into, are we gonna use any of the Rutland Heights sale money for anything in our budget this year?
Well, not for operational budget purposes, as you know, because
can't.
we're limited. No, so there's no plan in the capital plan for the use of the Heights money for this year. I mean, obviously, there's some projects overarching that I think we've talked about that, the Heights money could be a good funding source for example, design money or things like that, but
was for, what would you say, what was that for?
for design money, for
Oh,
example.
design, yeah.
How about, where in this book is the RDIC?
So they're in the boards and commissions, that's on page, excuse me, I'm sorry. I guess someone who has a table of contents could probably answer that for me. Page 27 or 26, depending on what book you are.
So, let me just get there.
So they just have two line items, development and industrial purchase services, and then development and industrial supplies. $100 each.
I got my ear burned off the other day by a certain member of that committee. Did that committee come to you and ask for more money and were declined?
No, the only board or commission that asked for more money and was declined was the planning board.
Okay. I just trying to get context.
Sure.
Was the RDIC invited to give a budget this year? And did they respond if they did?
Yeah, so as a part of the budget process, it was sent out, I can't remember when we sent the manual out to everyone at this point in the process, but it was sent to all boards and commissions and town departments.
And they didn't respond?
I didn't receive any responses from any boards and commissions.
So we didn't either a couple years ago.
Yeah.
He went to town meeting and got money, so. But my understanding is that you got those numbers and you said that they have other, when you said, they have other money that they can spend, so that's how they can operate. Not like they don't have any money.
Yeah, I mean, to be candid, it is uncommon to have separate budgets for boards and commissions. Usually those are, end up being absorbed through, whether it's a select board's line item or administrator or a respective department that is associated with that.
Maybe I
board
can
or
make a
commission.
visit to your office next week and just to ask the question because
Sure.
I got my ears burned off for, I think, 47 minutes according to my phone, and I'd just like to have a report for that.
But as a retort, they also did say that they're not really interested in putting out any more parcels for sale yet, for at least, I think they said 2 years at one of the select board meetings.
What business is it of?
So that's the thing, they made that comment and, they want more money. Well, how are you gonna do that? On one hand, hold off for 2 more years and still ask for more money, cause then what are,
What are you using the money for?
This
Is
is,
that an oxymoron?
this is
Yes.
where I'm,
Waiting for the
this is
golden
where
goose to show
I'm
up?
going
Yep.
around the,
I know, that's why I said it.
I mean, so, and candidly, in terms of the budget review process, I also take a look at previous year's actuals. If they have a budget and they don't spend it, even if it's $100 budget, which in that particular board and commissions, in '23, for purchase services, they were given $100, they spent 25. They weren't given a budget in FY '24, and I restored it in '25.
did any member of the RDIC come to your office and speak with
About the budget? No.
about financial issues related to the Rutland Heights property?
I wouldn't say financial issues. I think asking for financial assistance related, and this was related to the FY, I think '24 budget, and I think everyone was a part of that discussion too.
And now it's, I just wondered if it,
Yeah.
thank you.
But also, to develop a property, it costs nothing for the town to develop a request for proposals and promote the property. So, I'll just say it right now, I have a hard time advocating for additional resources for something that costs the town nothing.
You must be mistaken.
Yeah.
So
Blasphemy.
how are we going to, well, we can talk about this, how, the policy, if we're not gonna sell land for another 2 years up there, doesn't seem like,
That, I didn't say that was a policy, I said that's what they stated, they were gonna wait, cause they figured it would be worth more money if they waited until Harmony Hills was finished.
well, if I wait 200 years, my house is gonna be worth more.
But
This is
if there's
true.
if you have a buyer waiting, I'm not saying there is one, but if there's a buyer waiting, wouldn't you sell to someone
You
who's willing
preach
to
to the
sell?
choir, I've been wanting all that property, I don't care what they put in over
So-
there.
Alright, are they,
Well, this has been the same stories for what, 7, 8, 9, when do we,
it's been more, even
It's been
20
more.
years, hasn't
20
it?
years,
right.
probably.
same story,
Yeah.
okay.
Anything else?
So that's the end of our agenda items.
I have just one new, well, under budget stuff, we did go to a, thing at Wachusett with the Mass School Committee, whatever, which that lady was.
Yep.
And she asked if anybody wanted to ask to come to the towns to explain, the process, and I thought it was very informative.
And it also shows that we're not nearly the poor town that everyone claims we are.
Well, but it also showed those pie charts, committee, other ones, it's like, I was kinda like, okay. I can see where the towns are complaining, but what I'd like propose is, can we get her, she'll talk about, she'll give us a general overview, but specifically talk about Rutland. So, would anybody like to do that at one of our committee meetings?
We could.
When would be an appropriate time to do it? Before the school comes in?
No, we could do it anytime, this would make you, explain exactly what's going on.
Okay.
And she has legitimate information from the state, so when she comes in, she's got a specific, so very much like what Bay Path does. They come in with specific numbers, she had specific numbers, and it was kind of,
It's probably similar to what Kim Ferguson and Ann Goby told us a couple of years ago.
Okay.
You're not rural poor, you're not urban poor.
Right.
You're rich in the middle.
Yeah.
And we ain't giving you any money.
That's right.
The middle
Exactly.
class?
You
Just about like that.
Yeah.
yeah, pretty much.
So we could do it either, making it, we'd have to make another meeting night or something, but.
How long do you think she needs?
Well, she did the whole 5 towns, we were there for an hour and 20 minutes, hour and 30
Yeah.
minutes,
She
somewhere in
did
there.
it pretty quick.
And there were a few questions, so it would,
Which is good.
it should be less
She
than
was
that.
Why
fantastic.
don't we just put her on the agenda for our meeting that's after this,
March 21st.
yeah,
If she's available.
Yeah, if she's available.
yeah, if
She's
she's,
from Worcester, so she's close.
May I ask who it is, just so I can document? the
Tracy Novick.
Tracy Novak.
minutes? And what is she, what is she? Who-
Novick.
I'm
She's
sorry.
the field director for the Mass Association of School
School
Committees.
committees, yeah. I'll make a motion that we ask her to come to one of our meetings or whatever.
I think you need a
Is she
motion
on
for
the, is she
Yeah,
on the
I'm gonna-
Worcester
yeah,
School?
make
She
it
used to
formal.
be.
He's making
She
a
was
motion to
voted
make it
off.
formal.
Well,
that.
Ask,
Okay.
not voted off.
She chose
didn't make
not
the
to
cut.
rerun.
No,
Oh.
she lost.
so
I wanna be
motion,
nice.
have
She's,
her come and
Second,
she's fantastic.
any discussion? I'm gonna guess not, cause we just discussed it for a while. But any discussion? Sorry, I kinda. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. So we'll have to, obviously we'll have to reach out and see what, we don't wanna say we're gonna try to get, we can try to get it for that date, but obviously we have to go with what's available.
And then how will any part of the bylaw changes
No,
be,
but it's taped, and then you
will,
can see it.
will they be in effect at the annual town meeting?
Probably not. I mean, just simply because of the scale of bylaws that were accepted, the Attorney General's office is gonna, I think, take a while.
Can still talk twice for 10 minutes.
Peter told us no, they wouldn't be ready until at least June.
Yeah.
So,
That'll take a
do
while.
we have to, alright, if they.
we using the old bylaws, as you know.
Nothing's
No,
been
no, I'm not,
It's
I'm saying
possible that
but what happens
they do it
if
in
happens?
pieces, but it's gonna take a while.
I mean,
It's the state.
What happens?
well,
if
no,
it happens?
no, because Anita's got 30 days to get him to the Attorney General. Once the Attorney General
Yeah,
gets
they gotta
it, they have
follow.
90 days to get it back. And then,
And they often extend that.
right, exactly, and then it's all that. So, I mean, Peter explained all that, and it was so,
It's government. Government always takes forever to do anything.
Yep,
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
I think, yep, they're in motion.
Second.
Oh,
And you can.
all those in favor?
Sheet of paper.
Aye.
That you gave her.
Any
And then you took
opposed?
it the last.
8:03.